It's time for the Roots and Roots Show with your host, Greg Rashid, bringing you history and music from the Black American diaspora. Greg and his guests' goal is to root the show's information in your psyche, providing you the roots to expand knowledge within your community. Now here's your host, Greg Rashid.
And I want to say Swati Cop to everyone out there listening to the show today. This is Greg Rashid with another edition of the Root and Roots program. Now, I know many of you listen online at various sites, be it on YouTube, iHeart, you name it. And I really love those folks internationally that listen all over the world. I want to say hi to my new listeners over there in India, in Brazil, so many folks that listen in. And I want to thank you for the greetings and all that. And many more other people I should name, I can't name right now, that listen into the show. But a lot of folks listen every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Mountain Time in Colorado on KUHSdenver.com, created by the one and only, that master of mystery and music and mirth, the one and only Henry Archuleta. And I want to say hi to all my friends in the Colorado region. Hope to get back there maybe this year, but right now I am in Bangkok, as you know, and I'm just happy to have my guest on today who wrote an excellent book, and it's a book that was really needed. And I always think I know so much about Black history and sports and all, but I learned so much in this book, so it's never too late to learn. Never too late. You can always learn every day of your life. And what I'm talking about is the book Black College Nines, the history of HBCU baseball and the integrators of historically white college baseball programs. And the author's self-published book, the author is Jay Sokol. Are you there, Jay?
I am. Thank you very much for having me.
I thank you for stopping by here on the Root and Root Show. And I just, the book is just you cram so much information in this book, and it's like, I just love it. I just love what you're saying here. And I want to first ask you, you talk about it in the beginning, how your inspiration of writing it, but tell my listeners why you decided to write this book, and what's the significance of the book to you? And what do you hope to accomplish with the book for readers who want to read this book?
Well, the inspiration was there is so little information out there about historically Black college and university baseball. And with the, I don't want to say a renewed interest in Negro Leagues baseball, but the audience that appreciates Negro League baseball has really expanded in the last few years, especially with the 100th anniversary of the forming of the Negro Leagues, as a professional league. That I felt like I wanted to create that same expanded base of appreciation for HBCU baseball. Plus, in my head, I had so much research information over the past, actually probably close to 20 years, that I thought it was probably about time I get it down on paper.
And I'm glad that's how.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Really, you've done a superb job. And just, how long did it take you to actually research this book? Because the information, it's a book anyone that could read this book in one setting and garner all the information, I would be amazed. Because you got to go back and back, because it's fascinating. How many years did it take you just to do the research?
Well, seriously, I probably for the past 12 years is when I really got more serious about the depth of my research. And I think that anyone who just loves the history and the researching and the discovery of new information, they certainly don't mind spending a great deal of time in pursuit of that love, and that's what it was for me. I've always been a big college baseball fan, baseball in general, but even more so college baseball, and even more so than college baseball, HBCU baseball. And there was such limited resources for that. There were a couple of books. One was written in the late 30s, and one in around 1976 that had some information about Black college baseball, but that was about it. So,
yeah, and that's incredible. And you being, a white guy who didn't graduate from an HBCU, living in Ohio. I mean, it's just fascinating that, you were the one to really get this information together, and I applaud you for that because it's really, like I keep saying, repeating myself, but it is a wonderful book. And tell my listeners about, there's one player that really kind of got you going, that inspired you. You were reading, I guess you were reading something about him, and he's one of my favorite players in the 70s and 80s. And talk about that.
we talked about Ralph Garr.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. A white guy living in the North, I had little access to news, sporting news. I mean, I even back then I did read Ebony and Jet, but they just had little information about sports. But for some reason, I always had an interest in a lot of the greats from Black colleges that played pro football. Like Otis, and I'm talking about the early to mid 60s, like
Right.
Otis Taylor, Lem Barney, Willie Richardson, Bullet Bob Hayes. And from that, I mean, I knew all these guys went to HBCUs, but I think in 1967, I had a subscription to Sports Illustrated. In the back of Sports Illustrated, they have a little section called Faces in the Crowd, and this was 1967. Right. And one of the players that they featured was Ralph Garr from what at the time was Grambling College. Now it's Grambling State University. But it was just a very interesting blurb. And being a baseball fan and a college baseball fan and a fan of HBCU football players, it just grew from that point. But my research really developed as a sidebar, basically, to a project I was involved in the early 2000s. I was the general manager for a summer college baseball team that's a pro developmental summer league. Uh-huh. And we were based in Delaware, Ohio, which is the home of Ohio Wesleyan University. Ohio Wesleyan is the school that Branch Rickey graduated from, played at, and was the baseball coach in the early 1900s. And he had a player on that team named Charles Thomas, who was a lone Black individual on the baseball team. And Branch Rickey, later in life, when he helped integrate professional baseball by signing Jackie Robinson, always told a story about this fella, Charles Thomas, who was denied when Ohio Wesleyan went to play Notre Dame. This fellow was denied lodging because the color of his skin. Right. But Branch Rickey talked them into letting him stay with him. And the story goes that he said someday things will be better, and led to and use that as an inspiration to help integrate professional baseball. So in the around 2008, we had a special day honoring Charles Thomas, that individual, at one of our summer games that are based in Delaware, Ohio. Once I started researching him more and more, and I did a lot of the research after we had that Charles Thomas Day, and I learned more and more about him, and there was so little information about him, and the information that was out there about him in relationship to Branch Rickey, some of it was not accurate. Right. So the more I learned about him, the more I wanted to start learning about other players who integrated college baseball programs, and also the history of HBCU baseball. So it all basically started from that researching of Charles Thomas of Ohio Wesleyan University.
Well, it's great that you did that, because this book gets into so many folks. And excuse me if I kind of skip around with this book, because it's just so much in here, and we only have not that much time to talk about the book, but and I'll probably have you back on to talk more about it. But talk about, one thing, many things you mentioned in here, but talk about the first, Black college baseball game, because a lot of folks don't even think about it.
Well, actually, that was I talked about, or we were just talking a little bit ago about some of the misinformation. The little that has been written notes the earliest HBCU game between two HBCU teams competing against each other was in the early 1900s. But I discovered in a newspaper out of New Orleans that there was a intercollegiate game between two, at that time, New Orleans-based schools, Southern University, which is now in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but at the time they were in New Orleans, and they played Straight University. And Straight University is no longer in existence. It was absorbed with another college that's no longer in existence, and now they are both known as Dillard University, which is in New Orleans. But anyway, I discovered that they played each other in 1887. And what was interesting about that was some of the names of the players that appeared, and one of them that really stuck out because his name is pretty recognizable. His name is Bismarck Pinchback, and his father, oh boy, he has a long name.
PBS Pinchback. PBS Pinchback.
Right.
It was the first Black governor appointed. He was appointed in Louisiana. He was from Louisiana, I believe, and he was the first Black governor. Appointed, yes. He wasn't elected; he was appointed. But I didn't know the fact about his son. So it's like, wow, reading this book, it's like I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know for people who enjoy just discovering facts and doing research, I thought it was pretty neat to find out that his son Bismarck Pinchback played baseball for Southern University, and actually his father was one of the founders of Southern University in 1880. So this was only 7 years after that. But just a lot of interesting facts I found out over time.
And the one thing too, since you're talking, you mentioned Southern. Talk about the significance of Southern in the late 1950s and onward, because Southern University is a key university as far as HBCU's the baseball history and legacy. In particular, talk about, and I didn't even know they called this guy this name, because I knew he went to Southern, but it didn't dawn on me how important he really was to Black college baseball. And I'm talking about L.C. Brock, who is known, everyone knows him as Lou Brock, but he was called L.C. And talk about the Southern University significance.
Well, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, NAIA, is one of the governing agencies that runs athletic programs, comparable to the NCAA, but much smaller. The NCAA did not start accepting Black colleges into their organization until the mid to late 1950s. But the NAIA organization started admitting them a little before that, in the very early 1950s. One of the schools was that joined, I think the first year that they allowed them to be admitted, there were like 30 HBCU schools that joined. Excuse me. And of course, Southern was one of them. A few years later, in 1957, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, NAIA, started sponsoring a College World Series. And 2 years after they did, at the time it was still an invitational, so the teams got invited. And Southern University was one of those teams that got invited. And they ended up winning the College World Series of the NAIA organizations. And that was the first time, and actually the only time, an HBCU has won the College World Series. And interviewing some of the gentlemen who are on that team, and actually now they're if they're still around, they're in their 80s. But the ones that I had an opportunity to interview, at the time, they just went there trying to win.
Right.
They had no idea the significance of the whole thing. One of the players who I never did get to personally interview was L.C. Brock, Lou Brock. At the time that I started concentrating on that 1959 Southern season, he was already he was in his 80s, I think, and he had started to have a number of health issues that ultimately passed away. Probably it's been 3 or 4 years now. But he was definitely the star of the team back then. The newspapers, the African American newspapers, like the Chicago Defender and the Afro American News, and a number of the other ones, always featured stories about him when they were talking about Southern University's baseball program. So he was definitely a star even back then.
Yeah, definitely so.
Even though, I was going to say, even as a professional, he was known as one of the greatest base stealers, and is still one of the greatest base stealers of all time. But in college, he was not necessarily known for that. He was considered a power hitter, which definitely was not the case when he was a professional for 18 years or so.
Right. Although they say he hit one of the longest.
University won the World.
Although they said he hit one of the longest home runs ever when he was with the Cubs at the Polo Grounds in '62, if I'm not mistaken. So he had the power, but he devoted most of his energies. Devoted most of his energies to base stealing.
Yeah, and that became a science to him once he learned the nuances of stealing. I mean, gosh, it became a science and how we would do it, and it definitely showed.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that he was a math major at Southern.
He started out as a math major. I think it got too deep for him, and I think he ended up changing majors to what I don't know, but he might have ended up graduating with a math.
And I say that because I remember,
I'm not sure,
reading some interviews about him in the '70s, where he would talk about how his strategy for stealing was based on his math computations he learned in college. And it's just fascinating. He was going into detail of how, he could time thing and judge the distance based on how the pitcher moved, and all. It was just fascinating. But he all based it on math. It wasn't like pure speed, because he would always say he was not very fast. He was quick, but not really fast. But he knew.
Right, quick is definitely right, with a very, very quick first step.
Right.
Towards second base.
As compared to the guy we mentioned earlier at the beginning of this interview, Ralph Garr, he was fast. He was very, he was fast. I mean, he was called the road runner. He was quick. But yeah, it's the thing that, thinking about Lou Brock, the guy that signs him is also an HBCU alumnus, and I'm talking about Buck O'Neil. And the thing that a lot of people forget, that a lot of the folks like Buck O'Neil who came out of the Negro Leagues, they came out of black colleges first, and a lot of people assume that some of the players in the Negro Leagues, they were just naturally talented and they didn't have any education. But the fact was, a lot of those guys came out of colleges with degrees. And talk a little bit about that, because that's something that's kind of forgotten.
Yeah, and I do have a chapter in my book dedicated to the relationship between HBCU baseball and the Negro Leagues. And basically, the HBCUs were kind of like a feeder program for Negro Leagues, just like the minor league system was for professional baseball at the time, which at that time was referenced as organized baseball.
Right.
And they had a minor league system, which actually Branch Rickey was the one who developed that. But as far as HBCUs, they were a feeder program for all the different Negro League organizations, as well as HBCU schools. The collegiate, because they weren't governed by the NCAA or the NAIA way back, they were self-governing, some of the conferences and as well as the teams, and they would play Negro League teams, basically for when the Negro League teams would train, they would play HBCU teams and get their training, and also probably do some scouting that way.
And that's something that's rarely brought up. And that's why I'm glad that you wrote this book. And again, the name of the book is Black College Nines. And I'm talking to Jay Sokol about the book. And, I probably will have to get you back on here again to talk more about this book because there's so much information in here. But I'm glad, I have to say this. I'm glad, I was looking in particular in the book for the references to the DC area. So if I'm from Washington, DC, and also am in a sense, from Columbus, where you are, Columbus, Ohio, because I graduated from the Ohio State University. But I was happy to see that you mentioned somebody in your book that is rarely mentioned anywhere, even in the DC area. And I'm talking about Gary Mays, who went to,
Yes,
and my uncle used to tell me stories about Gary Mays from the 50s. And
really?
Talk a little. He played basketball with Gary Mays. For listeners, Gary Mays, he had only one arm, and my uncle would tell me he was one of the best dribblers ever back in the 50s in the DC high schools, the inner city DC high schools, and that he was so good that Elgin Baylor, legendary Elgin Baylor, was afraid to play against him because he was scared of the guys. He had one arm. He was scared of his nub. He didn't want to touch his nub, the arm that wasn't there. And Gary would use that to his advantage to just get Elgin out of the lane. But they ended up going to the College of Idaho, which was something because they were recruiting a lot of Black athletes out of the DC area in the 50s. And I was just happy to see that you mentioned Gary in there because he was a fascinating baseball player too. Just an amazing, great basketball player, great baseball player. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say he was in there because he was an integrator of a traditionally white college, and this was a very small college.
Yeah.
And they did recruit Elgin Baylor for basketball. Gary Mays, I'm not sure he played basketball there. He did play baseball. Another fellow who was a fellow named R.C. Owens.
Oh yeah.
And I believe his nickname was the Alley-Oop. He was a wide receiver in the National Football League for a number of years. I think the San Francisco 49ers was his primary team he was on. But and he was a leaper. But he played basketball and football at this small Idaho school. And I think R.C. Owens, he might have been from the Washington, D.C. area also.
I don't think R.C. was. But, I think R.C. may have, I forget where he was. He wasn't from D.C. I know that. But they were all there. And it was really, if you get a book, a friend of mine wrote a book about Elgin Baylor many years ago, about John. He wrote this book about Elgin. You should pick it up his bio. But the thing is, he talks about how they recruited, how the College of Idaho decided to recruit Black players to their program. And that's a story in itself. But anyway, I want to talk to you all day about this book. I have to get you back on. But again, I was glad that you talked about Gary in the book. You talk about the Howard University program in D.C. because I used to go, when I was in high school, I would go down at a place called the Ellipse, which is behind the White House. And there was a big field, and they would practice there. And I would go there with my buddies because we wanted to see Chuck Hinton, because we loved Chuck Hinton, who played for the Washington Senators, but he was the coach of the team. And years later, I met and became friends with one of the players on the team, Rock Newman, who later became the manager.
I know that name well.
Oh yeah, Rock Newman became the manager of Riddick Bowe, the heavyweight champion of the world back in the 90s. But we could go
right. And his
on.
name is mentioned. His name is mentioned in my book.
Yep, saw him in the hair Glenn Harris. I knew him.
Yes.
Another one at Howard University. But the book, I mean, the book is so fascinating. And I just want to, I hate to conclude that we'll have to conclude, but what do you want folks to get out of the book more than anything? What's your one goal?
Well, and what I said, and and I in the beginning of the book was that uh, all these fellas that played HBCU baseball that, gosh, went so unrecognized, um, because it was such a so little covered by mainstream America. They deserve some mention and some acknowledgement. So that was one thing that I wanted to accomplish. Another one was that I didn't tend to start out discovering, but discovered. And maybe if you do invite me back again sometime, we can go in more depth about it. But so many of these HBCU ball players in the early years were so involved with that went on to become so involved with civil rights groups and causes, that it was just amazing how many, and even some of these integrators of historically white college baseball programs in the earlier days, they even went on excuse me, to be involved, and actually a number of them went back and became college presidents at HBCUs, administrators, and very involved with HBCUs, even though they did not go there. But well, just so many of these guys, excuse me, and I'll mention one, then I'll let you go. James Weldon Johnson.
That was on the tip of my tongue.
His actual position was called executive secretary of the NAACP, but he ran the organization as the executive secretary. He played baseball in the late 19th century, I think around 1892, at Atlanta University, which became they dropped their sports programs and became a graduate school, then joined up with Clark University. Now it's Clark Atlanta University. But oh gosh, he not only ran the NAACP, but he was the composer with his brother of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which now is, or a long time has been known as the Negro national anthem. But he was involved in a lot of great causes. And he was just one of a number.
I never knew his baseball connection until I got your book. And I'm just so glad again that you came on today and that you wrote this great book. And I'm definitely going to have you back on. And by the way, Jay has a great website, blackcollege9s.com. And you can talk to Jay on there and learn more about what's going on currently with the programs at Black colleges. But Jay, again, any other way people can reach you, anything besides going to that website?
By email, which is just j@blackcollege9s.com. And that's all spelled out, Black College Nines, NINES at the end, all one word, .com.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna definitely have you back.
And if you want to get in touch with me, there is a way through our website that you can.
Right, that's it. So I'll be talking to you again, Jay. Just a great, happy to have you on. You wrote a great book. You take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. You'll have you on again. And that was my interview with Jay Suko. Just a great guy to talk to. Happy to interview him. Also happy to read this book. And by the way, I mentioned my friend Bajan in the interview, and I didn't say his last name. Bajan Bain. He's written a great book too. I interviewed him many years ago about Elgin Baylor. So check that book out, Bajan Bain's book on Elgin Baylor. But we're going to get to more music here, and we're going to do right now a new one from Jason Moran, From the Dance Hall to the Battlefield. And the whole CD, the whole album was about Black history. So Jason Moran's always talking about Black history in his music. But I'm going to do right now the title cut. And he's talking about, well, I'm just going to play it right now. You can hear who he's talking about. So let's hear that on the Root and Roots show.
They walked a very long way, saw you and tagged you forever, then strode away, but kept you in their mind as they tagged someone else. See, that's how a lot of this works. They didn't tell you where they were going, or what it would feel like, or sound like, or the stories you'd tell about all that you'd survive. And yes, you will survive, or be survived by. In 1881, James Reese Europe is born in Mobile, Alabama. And in the pre-dawn of the Great Migration, his parents moved up to Washington, D.C. because they knew. It is in D.C. that James begins to take violin lessons from Joseph Douglas, the grandson of Frederick Douglass, because Douglass innately knew that liberation not only speaks from the mind, but also from the instrument. The violin. Hollowed wood with a bow strung with horsehair, abrading the tense steel. See, liberation occurs in many forms. And when James then takes his violin to New York, he's seeking a new sound, new folk to break bread with, and a new stage to plow. For the stage will always be a portal, a place to test what is real and surreal. What he realizes is that a required respect on the stage and off must be demanded, which culminated in a black musicians union called the Clef Club. It is the humanity that I hear in these songs, in his bands. When James tagged 125 musicians, walked into Carnegie Hall with this brand of syncopation, the new beat had arrived, because syncopation is about urgency, pushing the beat ahead to apply the anticipation of the oncoming downbeat, an outlook that is inherently futuristic. So all that futurism arrives. But the indoor stage proved only preparation for another dangerous stage, the battlefield of World War I. And with his band of black diaspora, he brought the music across the Atlantic to the front line of the battle, as his commitment to expansive vision was beyond the last row of the seats in the house or the horizon of the trenches ahead. James Reese Europe becomes one of the seminal big bangs in black music. Let us meditate on that. From the dance hall to the battlefield and back home to you.
Which ain't nothing wrong, but see, basically,
Yeah, the Sapphires from the 60s, and I found out a little too late on the Root Root show. And before that, we went to Brazil with Aphrodisiac Cole, and that was Bongo Love. And before that, we started set off with Jason Moran from the dance hall to the battlefield. And he was talking about James Reese, Europe. And I hope that gave you an idea to like go out, Google his name, and learn more about Europe. If you don't know much about James Reese, Europe, please look him up. He's just one of the pioneers of just not so much black music, but American music. But we're going to get to more music here on the Root and Root Show. And as some folks know, but I'm going to repeat myself again, I have a petition out there. And the petition is put Wynonie Harris in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I did a whole show earlier in the month about Wynonie Harris, and shocked to learn that he is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is based in Cleveland, Ohio. So I created a petition, also a website that's called, a Facebook site, called Put Wynonie Harris in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Please check that out, sign the petition. I'm going to play some music by him for some of you who still might not know about Wynonie. And I'm going to do right now, Don't Take My Whiskey Away From Me, one of the pioneers of rock and roll music, Wynonie Harris. So let's hear it on the Root and Root Show.
Baby, don't take my whiskey away from me. Baby, don't take my whiskey away from me. You can help yourself to my last dollar. If you touch my jug, you're gonna hear me holler. Don't take my whiskey away from me. Baby, you can take my money. You can take my last cent, honey. You may think it's kind of funny, but remember this, baby, don't take my whiskey away from me. Baby, don't take my whiskey away from me. You can help yourself to my last dollar. If you touch my jug, you're gonna hear me holler. Don't take my whiskey away from me. Put that bottle down, woman. Away from me. Baby, don't take my whiskey away from me. You can help yourself to my last dollar. If you touch my jug, you're gonna hear me holler. Don't take my whiskey away from me. Rockabye, baby, in the treetop. Don't need no wind for Mr. Blues to rock. Gonna stop this rockin' today. Gonna stop this rockin', stop it right away.
Hey, Mr. Blues, don't you be no fool. The best thing to do is to play it cool. If you're gonna stop rockin', don't stop it now. We're gonna keep rockin' anyhow. Rock, Mr. Blues.
No, no, no.
Rock, Mr. Blues.
No, no.
Rock, Mr. Blues, won't you rock?
No.
Please, Mr. Blues, don't you stop.
Rock, rock, rock.
Well, all right then.
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 Rock, 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 rock.
Well, all right then. Please, Mr. Blues, don't you stop.
keep this good rocking on. Stop this rocking today. Gonna stop this rocking, stop it right away.
You've been rocking just like we like it. You've been rocking just like we like it. You've been rocking, please, Mr. Blues, don't stop.
I rock Lollipop Mama, Fanny Brown, rocked all the finest gals in every town. Stop this rocking today. Gonna stop this rocking, stop it right away.
Rock, Mr. Blues.
No, no, no.
Rock, Mr. Blues.
No, no.
Rock, Mr. Blues, want to rock.
No.
Please, Mr. Blues, don't stop.
Rock, rock, rock.
Well, all right then.
Rock, rock, rock.
Well, all right then.
Rock, rock, rock.
Well, all right then.
Rock, 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 rock.
Well, all right then.
Rock, 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 rock.
Well, all right then. Please, Mr. Blues, don't you stop.
There's gonna be a shotgun wedding. There's gonna be a shotgun wedding. There's gonna be a shotgun wedding here in town tonight. 'Cause my baby's man, someone else was spite tonight. I didn't get no invitation. I didn't get no invitation. I didn't get no invitation. But baby, that's still all right. I'm going around there, shoot out all the lights tonight. If she can't be mine, she won't be his neither. I mean that thing, I ain't lying. I sure ain't lying neither. I'm going around there, shoot out all the lights tonight. Your boots, I ain't just a jiving. I'll be there, baby, when the people start arriving. 'Cause my baby's man, someone else will spite tonight. There's gonna be a shotgun wedding. There's gonna be a shotgun wedding. There's gonna be a shotgun wedding here in town tonight. I'm going around there, shoot out all the lights. Everybody's talking about chicken and rice. All of those dishes are mighty nice. Gather around, you girls, and listen to me. I want to tell you about my baby's recipe. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. There's a gal named Miss Fanny Brown. She cooks the best gumbo in this town. All of you chicks can really cook, but Fanny Brown's learned something you don't learn in the books. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. 99 times I've tried to eat all those fine fancy cuts of country meat. Just can't eat a single bite. I just don't have the appetite. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding. I like it best of all. she promised me she wouldn't give no one a pudding but me. Yeah, she promised me she wouldn't give no one a pudding but me. But I don't believe her, I'll just have to wait and see. Gonna watch my baby both night and day, so she won't give my pudding away. My baby's pudding is all she owns, so there ain't no meat for Henry Jones. I like my baby's pudding, I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding, I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding, I like it best of all. I like my baby's pudding, I like it best of all.
I like my baby's pudding. And that was the one and only Wynonie Harris. And before that, we did by Wynonie 3 other songs. We did Shotgun Wedding, Rock Mr. Blues, and they called him Mr. Blues, by the way. And then Don't Take My Whiskey Away. Hope you enjoyed those songs on the Root and Road Show. But more importantly, sign that petition. Put Wynonie Harris in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You can go to the Facebook site, put Wynonie Harris in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I got to get out of here right now. And also support and read the book by Jay Sokol, Black College Nines. Also go to his website, blackcollegenines.com. Really enjoyed talking to Jay Sokol today on the Root and Root Show. But we're getting ready to get out of here right now. But again, this is Greg Rashid. Go in love, go in peace. Help somebody along the way, wherever you are, in your province, in your community, in your condo, wherever you are, on your farm, wherever you are in the world. Help someone, because we're all in this together, especially a senior and a young person. Help them along the way. But we'll see you next time on the Root and Root Show. And I thank everyone who listens and also sends me these compliments on Facebook and other places. Go in love and go in peace. Greg Rashid. See you next time on the Root and Root Show.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. And remember, spread the knowledge, share the power.